One of the most important aspects of running a construction or real estate development business is understanding your construction costs in the form of construction cost estimating and tendering. If you don't fully understand construction cost estimating, you stand a very high chance of not being able to win any construction work. Or if you do win construction work, there's a chance that it may not be profitable, and in fact, you could be operating at a loss. And the same plays out for if you're a property developer. Being able to understand construction costs and ensuring that you have enough budget to undertake your developments could be the difference between profitable projects and projects that you end up losing money on. And that's why in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about two books that I've used that have helped me to set up my systems and processes for being able to quickly and accurately estimate construction costs for my clients. My name is Aaron. I'm a chartered quantity surveyor and owner of Hayden Construction Services, a management consultant to the real estate development and construction industry. And so without further ado, let's get into the video. And so the first book that I want to share with you is this book here. So this is written by the RICS. And for those that don't know, that stands for the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. It's the professional body that I'm a chartered member of, and it's a globally recognized accreditation, which is very popular in a lot of the Commonwealth nations. It's very popular in Europe, the Middle East, Asia and Africa, and it's becoming more popular in North America as well. I have a number of Canadian clients that only hire RICS accredited professionals, and that's also something that you should consider as well. If you are hiring a construction professional such as a quantity surveyor or a commercial manager to come and manage your project, it's worth ensuring that they are a member of an accredited professional body such as the RICS. And what I tend to do with my clients during the onboarding process, when they're asking a lot of questions about my background, I tend to give them my RICS number so they can look me up on the RICS database and ensure that I have the relevant accreditations to undertake their project. So that's just a little bonus tip for you there. But these are the guys, the RICS, these are the guys that have written this book here. And this is the New Rules of Measurement 2. So it's one of three books. And this one here is the New Rules of Measurement 2. And this is the detailed measurement for building works. Now, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background about this book before we progress any further. So I mentioned that it's one of three books, and the first book is the New Rules of Measurement 1, and that is your order of cost estimating and cost planning for capital building works. And what the New Rules of Measurement 1 does, it allows property developers to have an understanding of the outline costs of their development projects at the concept design stage. So say, for example, you have an architect who's drafted up a design, a rough design and a concept and idea for a building. The New Rules of Measurement 1 enables you to gain an understanding of the cost for that particular project with very little design information. You then have your New Rules of Measurements 3, and the New Rules of Measurement 3 is your order of cost estimating and cost planning for maintenance work. So as you can imagine, this is a specialist type of process that has been set out to help those construction professionals who specialize within estimating maintenance costs. And so the purpose of this video is I want to talk about this book, and this is the New Rules of Measurement 2. As I mentioned, detailed measurement for building work. And you would use this book when you're ready to tender on a particular project. It's very useful if you're a contractor because it enables you to have a system in place that measures the detailed information that you have as part of a project. And obviously, if you're a construction client as a property developer, it helps you to understand the various different elements that go into building up your bill of quantities and how your contractor is going to be pricing the bill of quantities and the tender information that you have provided. So I'll quickly run through the contents of this book just to give you an idea of how it's really helped me as a construction professional in setting up my systems to quickly and accurately estimate construction work. So the first one is part 1, and this is a general overview, New Rules of Measurement 2. So it gives you an introduction, it tells you the purpose of New Rules of Measurement 2, it tells you how to use the New Rules of Measurement 2, it tells you about the purpose of bills of quantities, which is everything is based around the bills of quantities when it comes to estimating construction costs. So it tells you about the benefits of bills of quantities, the different types of bills of quantities. It goes into how you prepare a bill of quantities, and it also breaks it down into various different elements as well. So you have your prelims, so that's your site overhead and management. It tells you about risk, how to allow for risk within your bill of quantities. And then it tells you how you should be calculating your overheads and profit, and also codifying your bill of quantities. We move into tabulated rules of measurement for building work. And again, tabulated rules of measurement for building work, that's essentially how you break down the works. That's how you break down the various different elements of the construction project so that they can be captured as part of a priced bill of quantities. And that's what this book is really good at doing. And it breaks it down into various different elements. I'll quickly skim over these. So as I mentioned, you have your prelims. So that's your site management setup. That could be your site cabins, for example. It could be any plant that you need to hire. And that would be pretty much calculated based on how long the project duration is. And then it gets into any demolition work, alterations, repairs, and conservation work that needs to be done on the project, excavating and backfilling. It then moves into groundworks, remediation, soil stabilization, piling, underpinning, you name it. It's all captured within this book, and it tells you the rule for measuring those particular work elements. And as I continue through, we then start getting into carpentry, tiling, waterproofing, doors, shutters, and hatches, right the way through to your mechanical and electrical services. So it picks up everything within this book, and that's what I really like about it, is because it details how you should be setting out your bill of quantities. And the benefit in setting out a tabulated bill of quantities is that it really ensures that you don't miss any scope items. And that's the last thing that you want as a property developer or as a construction contractor, is to be missing scope items, because that's what's going to cost you money in the long term. It's what's going to eat into your budget if you haven't made the relevant allowances to cover key scope items. So that's where this book is very, very useful. That's the first book that I wanted to talk to you about. So once again, that's the RICS, written by the RICS, and that's the New Rules of Measurement 2, Detailed Measurement for Building Work. So highly recommend that book. And as I said, as a construction professional, that's the book that really helped me set out my process and my templates for being able to quickly and accurately measure construction work. And so the second book that I wanted to talk to you about is this book here. And this is the Code of Estimating Practice. And this one's written by the Chartered Institute of Building, otherwise known as the CIOB. And again, I'm just going to run through the contents of this book, and you'll very quickly understand why it's a book that I recommend, and why I use it, my quantity surveying business, and how I train new people that join my company, and the standards that I tend to uphold my quantity surveyors to when we're taking on new commissions. And so obviously it gets into an introduction and the underlying principles in parts 1 and 2 of the book. So it talks about the receipt of tender documents. So if the RICS book around detailed cost estimating for building works was more about how you set out your bill of quantities, this book is the next step beyond that, and that's how do you actually estimate construction costs. And it gives you the necessary information you need to be able to ensure that you have all of the relevant information and that you're following a process of estimating. It goes into tender information form. It talks about reviewing the tender information, so that's ensuring that you have all of the information you need to be able to estimate the project, especially if you're a construction contractor. You don't want to be pricing a job when you don't have all of the information. It could cause issues for you further down the line when you start getting into scope gaps and you start getting into arguments with your client about change orders and variations and all sorts of things, and whose fault is it that that information wasn't provided. So it runs through a checklist of the things that you should be looking for before you commence with your construction cost estimate. Then start getting into the contract conditions. It enables you to reflect on the contract. What does the contract say about how you're going to estimate the construction costs for the project that you're working on? This book sets out a process where you can put a sort of pre-estimate report together to ensure that you have all of the relevant information, that you've picked up the risks of the project, and that you have a report ready to decide whether you want to go ahead and estimate the construction job. It then goes into the decision to tender. So that's a decision as to whether you want to go ahead and estimate the project, if the job is the right fit for you. It then moves into checking documents for errors and omissions, just to make sure, again, that there's no scope gaps and that you have everything clarified before you commence with the construction cost estimate. There's also a process for design review, so sitting down with your team, looking at all of the design information, your structural drawings, your architectural drawings, and making sure that everything is in order and that you have everything you need and that it's all clear before you commence with the estimate. It then goes into procurement. That helps you to understand what you need to know in terms of your supply chain, your subcontractors, your material suppliers. It talks about your takeoff quantities, which again feeds into the bill of quantities, how you go about measuring the architects and structural engineers drawings. It talks about preparation of inquiry documents. So that's if you're a client and you're going out to tender for contractors. It talks about what documents you should be providing. And then it talks about things like quotation analysis, or otherwise known as tender analysis. So if you're a property developer, when you start getting costs back in from your contractors, it's your process for how you go about analyzing those different tender costs. And again, there is a little bit of overlap here with the book that I previously recommended from the RICS, where it talks about calculating net unit rates, all-in rates, hourly rates. It also refers to material quotations and subcontractor quotations. Always good if you can get actual quotations from subcontractors as part of your tendering and bidding process, because they tend to be fixed and firm if you can tie them in for a few months until you secure the project. It also talks about provisional sums, prelims. Again, we talked about prelims in the previous book, as well as project overheads. So there is a little bit of overlap here, but this is a really good book for sort of understanding the process a little bit more. And so as I quickly skip on through the book where it talks about tender settlement, so that's essentially settlement meetings, talks about agreement strategies, tender settlement. So it's pretty much about how you go about negotiating and settling a final tender and a cost estimate for a construction project, negotiations, writing letters of intent, and how you go about awarding a contract to a contractor. And as well as if you're a construction contractor, tells you how to kind of negotiate the contract terms or things to be aware of when you're negotiating the contract terms. Talks about handover to the delivery team. So that transition from when the job has been estimated, the contractor's won the job, and now it's being handed over to the delivery team. So the project managers and the site managers, that process of how you hand it over to the delivery team so they can actually build the project. And it goes in again into a bit of project control and feedback and performance data. So again, very important thing if you're estimating construction costs, it's how you go about acquiring feedback from your clients and how you put that feedback to use in the form of data. So again, this book's very good at being able to explain that. Then moving on towards the end of the book, we start looking at contractual agreements. So it talks about the various different types of building contracts, for example, design and build contracts, value management. It talks about two-stage tendering, and then it gets into the whole process of computerized e-tendering, which is if you're tendering a project through online portals, how you can manage that process, various different, I'm not sure if it talks about software specifically, but it does touch on e-tendering and the whole e-bidding process. So those are two books that I would highly recommend by the CIOB, and also the New Rules of Measurement 2, Detailed Measurement for Building Works. Two books I'd highly recommend. Like I said, they've helped me as a construction professional to be able to set up my systems and processes, and I've achieved a lot of success for my clients by following these processes and building my bill of quantities out so that they're able to fully capture everything, itemize all of the construction work, and then relay that back to the client so that they can fully understand what's being costed, and then they can build their budgets up from there before they go about getting things like bank financing in place or procuring contractors. Very useful resources, highly recommend them. And that's about it for today's video. If you got something useful from this, please give me a like, comment below, let me know what you'd like me to cover in future videos. Once again, I'm Aaron, a chartered quantity surveyor and owner of Hayden Construction Services, management consultant to the real estate development and construction sector, and I'll see you in the next one.